Namaskar. Welcome in this lecture series of Software Engineering Fundamentals. This is Dr. Bright Keswani, Professor in Computer Science and Engineering in Suresh Gyan, Vihar University, Jaipur. In today's lecture, we will discuss about all main types of testing. Uh, these are some learning objectives and outcomes of this lecture. Through this lecture, you will learn various types of software testing and in-depth knowledge about each and every software testing method. The expected outcome is that after the completion of this lecture, you will be able to understand about various types of software testing and understand that which testing method can be used in which type of project. So I hope this session will provide you the insight about uh, various types of testing. So the agenda of this lecture is this is the agenda of this lecture. There are various types of software lecture testing. We will discuss it. Discussion about black box testing and various black box testing techniques. We will discuss in this lecture. Then we will discuss about white box testing and white box testing techniques in this lecture. Let us start from the types of software testing. As you know that software testing is the main part of SDLC. Uh, in the whole software development life cycle, we are focusing on the quality outcome from each phase. So the software testing plays a major role, important role, a vital role in the uh, quality assurance of the software. Each and every output produced during or after the completion of each phase of SDLC is tested thoroughly, and test cases are generated by the testing professionals to ensure the quality of the outcome of each phase. So there are various types of software testing, various types of testing. You can there is a various ways to check the software whether it is a quality product or not. So uh, there are many ways to conduct software testing, but the most common methods are based on some concepts. Like there are two concepts basically. First is non-execution based testing, and second is execution based testing. In the non-execution based testing, the module is reviewed by a team, and in the execution based testing, the module is run against test cases. So we have to make the test cases when we are conducting the execution based testing, and we have to review the modules, uh, get the uh, expertise and view of experts when we are adopting the when we are conducting the non-execution based testing. Okay, so this is the basic difference between non-execution based testing and execution based testing. Now come to the non-execution execution based testing part. The non-execution based testing is based on fault detection strategy, and the fault detection power of these non-executive execution based techniques leads to rapid, thorough, and early fault detection. Okay, so when we are reviewing something, when we are reviewing our code, when we are reviewing execution, then it provides you the detection of code. Okay, so we can say that non-execution based testing is less expensive than the execution based testing. There are some reasons. What are these reasons? The execution based testing can be extremely time consuming because the most time is uh, uh, most time of the software development is running under, uh, we can invest our time for making the test cases in the execution based testing. But in the non execution based testing, we are not making, we are not concerned with the test cases, development of test cases. We are not concerned with the artificial or real test cases. Okay, so we are not assuming the conditions in the testing conditions. Okay, so execution based testing is a less time consuming activity rather than the execution based testing, because in the execution testing based testing we are making the test cases, we are designing the test cases, we are assuming the conditions, testing conditions also. Okay, and review, the second thing why the non execution based code testing is less expensive. The reason is reviews lead to detection of faults earlier in the life cycle. So if we are working through reviews of the code, when we are getting the uh, knowledge of expert, and we are focusing on the review only, inspection only, then, and when we are talking about, we are least concerned about the execution of software, we are concerned about the end product, then what is required, then the uh, what is the what will happen, then we are reducing the cost of the software through the non-execution based testing techniques rather than the adoption of execution based technique. Okay, in the execution based technique, the modules are run against test cases. We are developing the test cases and we are running modules. We are running modules against the test cases. We are imaging the scenario. We are creating the scenario, and we are we are developing the test cases, and then uh, we are putting the modules in the testing condition, and uh, to verify whether they are working or not. Okay, so this is the basic difference between non-execution based testing and execution based testing. The execution based testing is divided into two categories mainly. First is black box testing, and second is white box testing. uh, in the black box testing, it is not related to the uh, in the black box testing we are not focusing on the uh, execution of code. Okay, we are not concerned with the internal functionality of the code. We are focusing on what, we are focusing on only on the uh, what we inputted in the system, and will uh, what we are getting from the system. Okay, and on the other hand, the white box testing is related to the development of code. Sorry, white box testing is related to the what it is majorly concerned with the internal functionality of the software. Okay, and without regarding the specification, the code itself is tested without regard the specification is the phenomena of white box testing. And in the black box testing, the code itself is ignored. The only information used in designing test cases is the specification document. Okay, let us discuss about the in detail about black box testing. This is the simple illustration about the black box testing. As I earlier said, that in the black box testing, we are not concerned with the internal functionality of the system. We are only concerned with the input and output we get. Input we have given the system, and what will be the output we are getting from the system. Okay, black box test design treats the system as a black box, so it treats it as a black box. So it is the software testing technique where by the internal working of the item being tested are not known by the tester, and it is also known as functional testing. Okay, so it will check the correct incorrect functions. It will check the data structure errors. It will check the missing functions. It will check the performance related errors. It will check the initialization and termination related errors, and it will check the external databases access errors. So other means for black box testing, it includes, we can call it as a specification testing. You can call it as a behavioral testing. Sometimes you can call it as a data driven testing or functional testing, or you can call it as a input output driven testing. Okay, so it it uncovers the following, like it will check, as I said, that incorrect functions, data structure errors, missing functions, performance errors, and initialization and termination errors, and external database access related errors. The functionality of each module is tested with regards to its specifications, means its requirements, and its context. Context means what? Events. Okay, so this is a very important testing method, and there are some advantages and disadvantages also of this type of testing. The advantages uh, of this method is that the test is unbiased because the designer and the tester are independent of each other. This is the first advantage, because sometimes the designer, or you can say the programmer, a person who has developed the software, has his biased view about the software product. And uh, if the designer and the tester are working independently, so the resultant value is, we can call it as a unbiased. Okay, so the test is unbiased because the designer and the tester are independent of each other. Okay, secondly, the tester does not need knowledge of any specified programming language, because there is we are not concerned in this type of testing, we are not concerned with the internal functionality of the software. So uh, there is no need of knowledge of any specific language for the tester. Okay, uh, the next advantage is the test is done from the view of a point of view of the user, not the designer, because what we are in what we are concentrate, we are concentrate only in the on the output produced by the system. Okay, so we are not looking, being a tester, we are not looking the system as a, in the point of view of designer. We are looking uh, uh, as the point of view of user. Okay, what user want, what will be the end product. Okay, these are the focusing point, and whatever designer made is not our concern. Okay, the last advantage, you can say, that test cases can be designed as soon as the specification are complete. So uh, basically we can say that black box testing is the testing method which is based on the entirely based on the test cases. Okay, some disadvantages are also there. What are these disadvantages? The first disadvantage of black box testing is the test can be redundant if the software designer has already run a test case. Okay, so we are focusing, being a tester, we are focusing on the, we are looking the system as the point of view of user, not the designer's point of view. So what will happen, what may happen, the test can be redundant. Okay, if that software designer has already run a test code. The second disadvantage, the test cases are difficult to design because the designing of test cases is a difficult process. But the black box testing is based on the uh, test cases. So the designing of test cases is important. Uh, Now, how to design appropriate test cases? We have to assume, we have to imagine several scenarios. We have to imagine several conditions. Okay, and we have to conditions of failure. Okay, we have to imagine the several scenarios of failure. Okay, so we have to conduct the test cases which of for the testing purpose, black box testing purpose, which is very much difficult to design. Okay, and it is a time consuming activity also. So black box testing, when we are doing the black box testing, it is a time some how it is a time consuming activity. Now there are some black box testing techniques are there. These are the main techniques to black box testing. First is equivalence class partitioning. Second is boundary value analysis. Third is cause effect graphing, and last one is comparison testing. So these are the main techniques of black box testing. Equivalence testing combined with boundary value analysis is a black box technique of selecting test cases in such a way that new cases are chosen to detect previously undetected faults, and cause effective graph overcomes the weakness of the equivalence class partitioning and boundary value analysis. Okay, so now we will discuss about the uh, all uh, uh, all black box testing techniques uh, in an elaborative manner. First is equivalence class partitioning method. Equivalence partitioning, also called as equivalence class partitioning, and it is abbreviated as ECP, equivalence class partitioning. It is a software testing technique that provides the input test data to the applicant under test. Into each partition, at least one of equivalence data from which test cases can be derived. So this method divides the input, we can say, this method divides the input of a program into classes of data, and test cases design is based on defining an equivalence class of a particular input. An equivalence class represents a set of valid and input values. What is equivalence class? Then equivalence class is a set of test cases such that any one number of the class is representing a representative of any other number of class. Okay, so this is the basic idea about equivalence class partitioning. There are some guidelines also for conducting the equal class partitioning. The first guideline given by Pressman in 1997. There are mainly four guidelines. First is related to the range, second is related to the specific value, third is related to the member of a set, and fourth is related to the Boolean expression. Okay. Uh, in the range guideline, if an input condition specify a range, one valid and two invalid equivalence classes are defined. This is the first guideline related to the range. If an input condition specify a range, one valid and two invalid equivalence classes are defined. The second guideline is related to the specific value. What it says? It says that if an input condition requires a specific value, one valid and two invalid equivalence classes are defined. I am repeating again. Uh, Second guideline suggests that if an input condition requires a specific value, one valid and two invalid equivalence classes are defined. The third guideline, as per the third guideline, which is related to the member of a set, which suggests if an input condition specify a number of a set, one valid and one invalid equivalence class are defined. Okay, so these are three guidelines, important guidelines, and the last guideline, that is fourth guideline, related to the Boolean expression. If an input condition is Boolean, one valid and one invalid class are defined. Okay, so this is all about the equivalence class partitioning. Pressman given some guidelines regarding the equivalence class partitioning, and I elaborated all the guidelines, all four guidelines to you. First is related to the range, second is related to the specific value, and third is related to the member of a set, and fourth is a Boolean expression, Boolean. Now come to the next technique, which is boundary value analysis, BVA. Boundary value analysis is a type of black box or specification based testing technique in which tests are performed using the boundary values. In the given example, you can very much understand through the example this boundary value analysis. Suppose an exam has a pass boundary at 50%, merit at 75%, and distinction at 85%. The valid boundary value for the scenario will be as given this, like 49 and 50 for pass, 74 and 75 for merit, and 84 and 85 for distinction. Boundary values are validated against both the valid boundaries and invalid boundaries. The valid boundaries cases for the above example can be given as follows. What are that boundary cases? Lower limit boundary is 0, 0 for lower limit boundary value, and 101 means above 100 for upper limit boundary value. So invalid boundary cases are 0 and 101. Okay, so we can say that boundary value analysis is complementary to equivalence partitioning. Rather than selecting boundary inputs values to partition the equivalence class, the test case designer chooses values at the extremes of the class. So these are the extremes of the class. Okay, boundary value analysis also encourages test case designer to look at output conditions and designs test cases for the extreme condition in output. So what is happened? You should uh, make the boundary, you should define the boundary, you should assume the boundary of values, and this is this type of technique or testing technique is the boundary value analysis, called as boundary value analysis. Okay, which is related to the four guidelines. First is range, second is minimum and maximum number, third is output condition, apply the all guidelines to output condition, and fourth is internal data structure. So data structure at its boundary may be exercised through test cases, designing of test cases. Okay, come to the next next technique of black box testing is the cause effect graphs. Cause effect graph is a black box testing technique that graphically illustrates the relationship between a given outcome and all the factors that influence the outcome. So you can see in this picture, there are several causes, and there is a effect of that these causes. So it is like a decision tree type structure, and you can define cause effect graph flow. You can find out, you can decide various causes and the effect of corresponding effect of the causes on the testing procedure. So circumstances, these are circumstances under which cause effect diagrams used. First circumstances is to identify the possible root causes, the reasons for a specific effect, problem or outcome. The second circumstances to relate the interactions of the system among the factors affecting a particular process or effects. The third is to analyze the existing problems so that corrective actions can be taken at the earliest. Okay, so these are some circumstances. What are the benefits? These are the benefits. First benefit, it helps us to determine the root cause of problem or quality using a structured approach. Secondly, it uses an orderly, easy to read format to diagram use cause and effect relationship. Okay, you can see in this figure there are several causes, and what will be the effect of these causes, it is mentioned, you can mention it here. Okay, so this is the clear cut diagrammatical, it provides the diagrammatical representation, clear diagrammatical representation of the cause and effects. Okay, next it indicates possible causes of variation in a process, and it defines areas where data should be collected for further study. The another benefit, it encourages team participation and utilizes the team knowledge of the process. So because software development is essentially a teamwork, testing is essentially a teamwork. Okay, so you have to gather knowledge of different people. So cause effect diagram will provide you uh, will encourage the team participation. Okay, and utilizes the team knowledge of the process. And lastly, it increases knowledge of the process by helping everyone to team more, everyone to learn more about the factors at work and how they relate. So these are the benefits of cause effect diagrams. Now, how to draw the cause effect diagram? There are some steps. There are 5 steps. First step is to identify and define the effects. First, you have to identify the effects. Then you have to identify what are the causes of such effect. Okay, so this is the basic phenomena, but this is divided into 5 steps. The first step is identify and define the effect. The second step is fill in the effect box and draw the spine. The third step is identify the main causes contributing to the effect being studied. And the fourth is for each major branch, identify other specific factors which may be the cause of the effect. Okay, and last one, categorize relative causes and provide detailed level of causes. So these are the steps you can by which you can uh, draw a cause effect diagram properly. Okay, uh, you can use some symbols also in this cause effect graphing. The symbols are divided into 4 categories: identity, not, or and. Okay, so cause effect graph translates the equivalence partitions into decision table from via Boolean operator descriptions of the input condition in terms of the input variables. And test data can be generated from the decision table form, reducing the number required. Now come to the next testing method, that is the last testing technique of black box testing, which is comparison testing. Comparison testing is based on the it identify the difference between the expected and actual results. Okay, so basically you can say that comparison testing comprises of comparing the contents of files, comparing the databases against actual results. Okay, suppose we have designed a file, we have designed data, we have designed output, we have designed databases. Okay, what we have designed and what are the results, actually results we are finding. So what is the expected, what is required by the client is more important, uh, uh, rather than the result we are getting from the software. So compare testing is the comparison study or comparison testing between the expected and actual results. There are comparison test tools are there. So comparison test tool often have functions that allow specified sections of the files be ignored or masked out, and this enable the tester to mask out the date or time stamp on a screen or field, as it is always different from the expected one when a comparison is performed. So sometimes we are getting different results as we expected. Okay, so this comparison testing will help us to produce the uh, results as per the client requirements. Now let us discuss about the white box testing. It is known as glass box testing, structural testing, clear box testing, open box testing, logic driven testing, and path oriented testing. So as I earlier said that white box testing is related to the is concerned with the internal functionality of the software. We can say it is concerned with the application code. So uh, uh, we can say that white box test design allows one to peek inside the box, and it focuses specifically on using internal knowledge of the software to guide the selection of test data, because test cases, test data are very important thing when we are doing the testing. Okay, so test cases generated through the internal functionality, uh, knowledge of the internal functionality of the software system. As I said that there are so many names of white box testing. Sometimes examiner will ask about the glass box testing. So you may know that you should know that the other name of glass box testing. The white box testing is the name of glass box, is sometimes known as glass box testing or structure testing or clear box testing or open box testing. Okay, so you should remember all the names, all such names of white box testing. The basic purpose, the basic phenomena of this white box testing, that it is concerned with the internal functionality of the software. Okay, in white box testing, test cases are selected on the basis of examination of the code rather than the specification. And in the black box testing, we are concentrating on the specifications, our whether the specification given by the user or given by the designer, we are focusing on the specifications. But in the white box testing, test cases are selected on the basis of examination of the code. So Inspection of code is important in the case of white box testing. White box testing is a software testing approach that examines the program structure and derive test data from the program logic. Okay, white box testing requires the intimate knowledge of program internals, while black box testing is based on the knowledge of the system requirements. As I earlier said, that uh, uh, the tester in the case of black box testing, there is no need for tester to know the specific programming language, because in the black box testing we are not focusing on the uh, internal functionality of the system or software. Okay, so there are some advantages of white box testing and some disadvantages also. The first advantage of white box testing forces test developer to reason carefully about implementation. Carefully implementation is required when we are is we will implement the system carefully when we are knowing the internal functionality of the system. We have checked the internal functionality of the system. So white box testing is important thing, and uh, it reveals the error in hidden errors in the code. Okay, it finds the hidden errors in the code, and it is beneficial when we are having some side effects. So it prevents the side effect. It provides the optimization. It provides the uh, quality product. It provides a successful implementation of the system. Okay, so these are the advantages of white box testing, you can say. Some disadvantages of white box testing are also there, uh, uh, like it is a expensive method, and it there are some uh, when some cases are missing, or some part is missing in the code, then what will happen? Some part is omitted in the code, or some part is hidden in the code, then what will happen? Eh, Through this testing, we cannot we cannot predict the hidden about the success or failure through the because of the hidden part of the code. So what is important in this white box testing? It is important to have clear cut understanding about the code. In depth knowledge about the specific language is required when we are doing the white box testing. Okay, now come to the uh, white box testing techniques. The first technique is basic part testing. Basis part testing is the first technique, white box testing technique. Second is structural testing. Third is logic based testing. And fourth is fault based testing. So these all types of testings are very much important, and which are related to the white box testing. We are considering these all techniques are as a white box testing techniques. In the basic path testing, basic path testing, a structured testing or white box testing technique, is used for designing test cases intended to examine all possible paths of execution at least once. Okay, so it is well known that uh, during the basic part testing, uh, you should examine all test cases, all conditions at least once. Basic part testing is a white box testing technique, and it allows the design and definition of a basic set of execution paths. The test cases created from the basic set allow the program to be executed in such a way as to examine each possible path through the program by executing each statement at least once. Pressman suggests that Each path should be executed at least one. Each statement should be executed at least one, so that we should know, we can understand, we should know about the error. Uh, to be able to determine the different program path, the engineer needs a representation of the logical flow of control. So flow of control, you can understand through this program, which provides a basic understanding about the uh, basic part testing. Creating and executing tests for all possible paths results in 100% statement coverage and 100% branch coverage. Okay, so this is the general phenomena. You should, when you are uh, conducting the basic part testing, you should uh, execute at least all statement at least once, which is the basic uh, primary reason for basic part testing. Okay. Um, Now come to the next types of basic white box testing, that is structural testing. Structural testing, also known as glass box testing or white box testing, it is an approach where the tests are derived from the knowledge of the software's structure or internal implementation. Structural testing is related to the software's structure or internal implementation. Okay, so the other names of structural testing includes clear box testing, open box testing, or logic driven testing, or path driven testing. Okay, external structural testing examines source code and analyze what is present in the code. Structure testing technique is named, sometimes called as dynamic, meaning that code is executed during the analysis, and this implies a high test code cost due to compilation or interpretation, linkage, or file management and execution time. So, test cases are derived from analysis of the program control flow. Okay, so there are some various types of structural testing. Uh, the first type of structure testing is statement coverage testing. Second is branch coverage testing, because you can check each and every structure exists in the system, in the software. So statement coverage testing should be done, branch coverage testing should be done, condition all conditions mentioned in the software should be covered in the condition coverage testing, and loop coverage testing should be done, path coverage testing should be done, domain and boundary analysis testing should be done, and data flow testing should be done. Okay, so these are the various types of white box testing. uh, uh, Now we will discuss about the logic based testing. Logic correspondent to the internal structure of the code, and this testing is adopted for safety critical applications such as softwares used in aviation industry, because you already know that software which are mm, developed for DRDO or ISRO or scientific or aviation industry or defense purpose are very crucial, very sensitive in nature, and they are called as critical applications. And this test verify the subset of the total number of truth assignment to the expressions. So logic based testing is the uh, important testing. And logic coverage sources are, logic coverage comes from any of the below mentioned sources like decisions in programs and uh, finite state machines and state charts. And thirdly, requirements. Okay, so Basic part testing is required. Fault uh, based testing is very much important. For fault based testing attempt to show the absence of certain classes of fault in the code. So fault based testing is important type of testing. uh, Path coverage testing is important type of testing. uh, we have to discuss uh, the various other type of testing in detail. In the structural testing, we have to discuss about the statement coverage testing. This is the simplest form of white box testing, uh, whereby a series of test cases are run such that each statement is executed at once, and it its achievement is insufficient to provide confidence in a software product behavior. So, uh, a- structural testing is related to the software structure and internal implementation, and structure coverage testing, statement coverage testing ensures that execution of every each and every statement at least once. Okay, branch coverage testing is an important and improvement over statement coverage, and in that a series of tests are run to ensure that all branches are tested at least once, and it is also called decision coverage techniques. Like statement or branch coverage are called structural tests. We can say branch coverage and statement coverage testing both are the uh, synonym of structural testing. In the condition coverage testing, the criteria requires sufficient test cases for each condition in a program decisions to take on all possible outcomes at least one. So, what are the conditions mentioned in the program should be tested under this condition coverage testing? Okay, all conditions should be checked at least one. In the loop coverage testing, all loops available in the program should be checked at least once. Okay, whether we initialize the loop, whether it is executed for 0, 1, 2, and many iterations covering initialization or typical running, and what is the termination conditions there. So you have to check each and every loop. You should run, you should make test cases for checking the loop coverage during the loop coverage testing. Then path coverage testing. Path coverage is the most powerful form of white box testing. All paths are tested under this path coverage testing. The number of paths in a product with loops can be very large, and methods have been devised to reduce the number of paths to be examined. And this technique is capable to overcome or uncover more faults than by branch testing. Okay, so you should during this testing you should give some conditions to test each and every path and cover each and every path at least once. Domain and boundary testing. Domain testing is a form of path coverage, and path domains are a subset of the program input that causes execution of unique paths. The input data can be derived from the program control flow graph. Test inputs are chosen to exercise each path and also the boundaries of the each domain. So, a boundary test would incorporate test inputs on and slightly off the boundaries of the paths. Okay, so the domain and boundary uh, testing is a very important testing, comes under the structural testing method. The last structural testing method is data flow testing. Data flow testing focuses on the points at which variables receive values and the points at which the values are used. Okay, and this type of testing serves as a reality check on path testing, and that's why many authors view it as a path testing technique. Okay, data flow testing is considered uh, for incorrect uses of variables and consistent on uh, identifiers, and as with code coverage strategies, data flow testing cannot detect missing statements. It is detected the flow of the data in the software. Okay, we have elaborated the logic based testing also earlier. Uh, uh, there are some steps that apply to develop our decision table, uh, like list all actions that can be associated with a specific algorithm, list all conditions or decisions made during execution of the algorithm, and associate specific conditions with specific actions, eliminating impossible conditions, combination of conditions. Okay, and define rules by indicating what actions occur for a set of conditions. These are the logic based testing, where you can test the logic of your program, and logic covers the decision in a program, all decisions and states and requirements of the uh, logic. Okay, so we have discussed about fault-based testing also here, that fault-based testing attempts to show the absence of certain class of faults in the code. Okay, this is all about this class, this lecture. Now we will, this is the time to for self-assessment, assessment through multiple choice questions. There are 10 multiple choice questions given in this PPT. Let us discuss all questions one by one. The first question: in the execution based testing, the module is run against test cases. State this as statement true or false. The statement is true, because in the execution based testing, the module is run against test cases. Uh, the second question: non execution based code testing is less expensive than execution based testing. State this statement whether it is true or false. The answer is true. Yes, non-execution based code testing is less expensive than the execution based testing, because we are not concerned with the, we are in the execution based testing, we are focusing on the test cases. We have to generate various test cases. So it is a time consuming activity and it is a costly activity. Okay. Uh, the third question is: system validation is achieved through a series of tests that demonstrate conformity with requirements. First is black box, second is white box, third is peak load, and fourth is none of above. Black box is the right answer of this question. Fourth question: dash is a white box testing technique that focuses exclusively on validity of loop constructs. Okay, the given option is are loop testing, data flow testing, condition testing, or none of the above. The answer is loop testing. The fifth question: dash is a test case design method that uses the control structure of the procedural design of design to derive test cases. First is loop testing, second is data flow testing, third is condition testing, or fourth is white box testing. So the right answer is white box testing. White box testing is a test case design method that uses the control structure of the procedural design to determine to derive test cases, because white box testing is concerned with the internal functionality of the system. The sixth question dash refers to the response time or the system being installed. The options are loop testing, data flow testing, condition testing, and performance time testing. The answer is performance time testing is D is the answer. Time testing is referred to the response time of the system being installed. The seventh question dash is used to determine whether the system will handle the volume of activities that occur when the system is at peak of its processing demand. There are four options: data flow testing, condition testing, performance time testing, or peak load testing. The answer is peak load testing. The eighth question dash method selects test paths of a program according to the location of definitions and uses of variables in the program. The four options are loop testing, data flow testing, condition testing, and none of above. Right answer is data flow testing. Data flow testing is a method selects test path of a program according to the locations of definitions and uses the variables in the program. The ninth question is dash has a responsibility of detecting any type of error that may be in the software. The four type of options are given there. Here, first is coding, second is testing, third is verification, and last is code review. The answer is testing. The last question dash is used to determine whether the system will handle the volume of activities that occur when the system is at peak of its performance of its processing demand. The given options are unit testing, system testing, peak load testing, and none of above. The answer is system testing. Okay, system testing is used to determine whether the system will handle the volume of activities that occur when the system is at peak of its processing demand. This is all about the uh, assessment through multiple choice questions. Uh, there are some books. If you have any query, you can consult these books, and I hope your query will be resolved after the consultation with these books. I hope this lecture provided you a clear-cut understanding about the topic that we have chosen for today. Have a good day. Thank you.